Mic check, mic check. All right. Mic check, mic check. Morning Masters Podcast, your host, main, of course. I'm back with a special guest across from me. Real quick, can you please tell people who you are and what you do?
I am Janice Allen Jackson. I am the host of the Local Matters Podcast of Georgia and principal of Janice Allen Jackson and Associates, where we provide consulting services to local government and nonprofit organizations.
Let's clap it up for you real quick. I'm gonna make sure that's in there real quick. All right, all right. All right. How you doing today?
I am doing great. Hope you are too.
Oh yeah, I can't complain. I can't complain. So, real quick, I know we just did a swap cast, which is this is the first time I did a swap cast in the same day. It was different, but I like the challenge of it, and I thought it was dope. You did an amazing job, first of all. Secondly, before I always get to what the person does and what I know them for, and the good they've done for the community or whatever. I wanted to know a little bit about you. So, if you can, tell us a little bit where you from, when you was raised, how the household was for you, and things like that.
Okay. I was blessed to be born in Augusta, Georgia.
Okay.
I was born in a building that no longer exists. It was the old University Hospital, which was torn down a few years ago. But born there, raised in the historic Hornsby subdivision.
Mm.
In fact, I can talk a little bit about that later on. But one of my pursuits is an LLC that we put together to revitalize the historic Hornsby subdivision. But yeah, I was born at University Hospital. 3 days later, came to Hornsby subdivision and have been connected to it for the rest of my life. So,
Wow.
attended W.S. Hornsby Elementary School 1 through 7, A.R. Johnson Junior High School 8th and 9th, and then the Academy of Richmond County for high school.
Oh, Richmond in the building. ARC.
Yes, yes,
Okay.
ARC. I am a
Okay.
musketeer, and left Georgia, right after graduation to go to college at William and Mary in Virginia, and enjoyed that experience. It was radically different from where I was at Augusta, but enjoyed the experience nonetheless because I felt like that was really where I should have been. That was the type of place God intended for me,
Mm.
and have worked in local government in Maryland, North Carolina, and Georgia
Okay.
since that time. So yeah, I've kind of traveled up and down the eastern seaboard and have enjoyed the journey.
Well, tell me a little bit about you as a child, though. Like I know you
Mhm.
say you're from here.
Mhm.
What was Augusta like back then, around that time? I don't want to ask your age like that, but around that time, like
It's
that
okay.
era, maybe
It's
we can
okay.
figure it out. So,
Um, I was fortunate enough to be born after segregation and those sorts of things.
okay.
So I think the only time I was in a segregated environment was when I was actually born. I was born in the Negro ward at the old University Hospital.
Hold on,
Um,
real quick.
mhm,
I'm sorry. I'm sorry.
mhm,
That's the 80% listening, right? Negro ward. What does that
mhm.
mean? Define that for me.
Negro ward means at that time the hospital was segregated. Um,
Oh wow.
yeah, I was born in 1963, so this is my birthday year, my big milestone, sort of birthday year. And I was born up there, but like people talk about having experience riding on the back of the bus and the white and colored
Mm-hmm.
water fountains and all that kind of stuff. Fortunately, I never saw any of that stuff.
Wow.
But yeah, I was born in the Negro ward, and like I said, I think that was the only like formal segregation that I ever experienced. And of course, I don't remember it, fortunately. So,
Okay. Okay.
uh huh.
Oh, so you said that. I always feel like people's story cause can be
Hmm.
history, and that's history right
Hmm.
there. Because I've interviewed plenty of people. Nobody has ever said those two words put together. Negro
Really?
ward. It's
Yeah.
the
Okay.
first. You
Okay.
have birthed that on more than a masses.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So that's just dope to hear.
Hmm.
Okay. So yeah, in during that time though, like because I know me you speak about it, and people don't like Augusta, this
Hmm.
that and third. What was the temperature like around that time? Was it more pride in Augusta? Was it more I'm going to Atlanta for a better life, or like what was the
I certainly felt there was more pride in Augusta then.
hmm,
Um, as a woman in particular, um, as I was growing up, and we're talking, like my elementary school, middle school life, my parents were always just very interested in the news. So we were watching the news and we were reading the newspaper on the regular. And I therefore came to learn of Black women who were doing really significant things,
Mm.
like Carrie Mays was on the Augusta City Council. Can't remember the exact years, but I was, probably still in elementary school at that time, but I was aware of it. Um, you had S. M. McIntyre, who was pastor of a Baptist church, which was completely unheard of that a
Mm.
Black woman would found a Baptist church and be leader of it and have men who were subjected to her authority. Lucy Laney High School, of course, is named after a woman who was an esteemed educator, not just well known in this area, but throughout the Southeast. And then Jessie Norman was an opera singer, world
Mm.
renowned opera singer at that time. And she was born on Forest Street, which was, right behind A.R. Johnson Junior High School, right in that area. So there were so many Black women in the Augusta area who were doing remarkable things that I just sort of perceived that I had no limits as an African American female.
Wow, that's that's I'm blown away by that response. That's a lot. That's just great to hear, rather,
Mhm.
because you know when this is something in real time. These people they weren't gone. They was alive, right?
Well, Lucy Laney had
No,
passed. I
no,
believe
besides
she had
her,
passed. But yeah, Norman, that was,
she just passed away a little while
yeah,
ago.
yeah, passed away a few years ago. So yeah, she was on world stages when I was in elementary school. And then later on, I read her book, and she talked about her time at A.R. Johnson Junior High School. And I'm like, well, I'll be darned. I was sitting in the same classroom she sat in.
Yeah,
So, and probably had some of the same teachers. So that just all of that just kind of gave me the feeling that, hey, that's education, that is ministry, that is politics, and that is music.
mm,
And Black women from Augusta were making a remarkable legacy in each one of those areas. So this is, I'm in the 1970s, forming my opinions about things. And I was just like, well, shoot, I ought to be able to do anything because they did it.
that is great. That is
Hmm.
great, and it's more great to hear, mainly because me not being from here, but just being here as long as I've been here. I'm passing these roles. I'm passing these rec centers, and I'm saying that because these are just names you made. These are just names you
Hmm.
named, and to some people, myself could be included. Those are just streets. That's a
Yeah,
street.
right.
That's just a gym I can go play basketball at. That's just a school, you know?
Hmm.
And really it's more than that. It's a lot more than that. And you're someone who's pretty much telling me like that was what shaped and molded me to believe I can do anything I wanted to do.
Hmm.
Because these people were in my backyard. They were from where I was from.
Yeah,
They I felt like we had similar life chances.
exactly. Exactly. Yep. Carrie Mays, you mentioned that, Jim. Yeah, she was a city councilwoman when I was in elementary school. One of the other things that happened when I was in elementary school was the Augusta riot,
I heard
which
about that.
also sort of shaped me to some extent because I was a little tyke back then. I mean, I was maybe in the, I don't know, second grade or something like that. But I distinctly remember, in fact, it might have been in the first grade. I distinctly remember the older kids in school talking that day about the plans that their older siblings had talked to them about.
Oh wow.
Yeah. So I don't know if the news knew there was going to be a riot, but we knew there was going to be a riot because the younger siblings came to school to talk about what their older siblings were planning to
Mm.
do.
And not to compare anything like that, but you think about the ride, and like I said, that's history, but your
Hmm.
story is part of
Hmm.
history. So
Hmm.
I'm glad you're saying what you're saying, right? But you think about in today's culture, how those older quote unquote siblings that will be to me, in my opinion, real activists,
Hmm. They were.
plans executing, going ahead and doing what they got to do for a greater
Hmm.
purpose, right? And I know, and I'm not saying you can't be an activist and none of that today, but we have a lot of type activists, social media activists. They'll post a
Hmm.
status, and that's about as far as we're gonna go, right?
Right.
Um, or if it go viral, then you might do more. But as far as you can go is, the statuses and stuff like that. Um, what are your thoughts on things like that? As far as uh, people using social media as they kind of only weapon for against activism or for activism versus you coming up in a time where there were riots, there were chant I don't say parades, but just there were people formed and
Marches.
marches and things like that happening in real time for real, really being set up, really real commitment
Mhm.
versus I'm gonna post this on my phone, turn around and just,
Yeah,
it's what it
social
is.
media is interesting, and nobody's ever asked me that question before, but social media is really interesting for a couple reasons. One is you have to look at what's behind it, what's motivating. I mean, some people are posting incendiary things on social
Mm-hmm.
media to get followers. And when they're getting followers, it's a way for them to monetize this in some way or
Right,
another.
right.
So, is the real motive to speak out about perceived injustices, or is the real motive just to, get more followers so you can, get paid more for speaking engagements, write books, et cetera, et cetera?
Definitely, yeah.
So that's the first thing. Sort of, what's the motive? The second thing is, yeah, it's a whole different thing to get out there because you realize some of those older siblings got arrested that day. Some of them got shot that day,
Mm.
so they were really taking their lives in their hands by deciding to participate in the Augusta riot. And I think the third thing that I would say about rioting generally, it tells me an awful lot about the city if you had a race riot, you know, because there's some cities that didn't have any.
Mm.
And that's one of the things as I traveled around the country and I learned more about the places that I was taking jobs in. That would be one of the things I would want to find out. I said, what did y'all do in the civil rights movement? Was there any riot
And why
here?
not? Yeah.
And there are a few places I lived that never had one. So that will tell you about the spirit of activism and just the attitudes of the people in the community.
Okay. Um. So I know you went to, you said A.R. Johnson
Hmm.
Middle at the time. Was that still a
Junior
I'm
high
sorry,
school.
junior high school. I'm
It was
sorry.
right before it became a magnet program.
Okay.
At that time, A.R. Johnson was declining in enrollment just because there just weren't as many people living in those neighborhoods anymore. And I actually was out of zone because I'm from East Augusta, and I would have been zoned for what was then San Barfera Junior High School, and but I just kind of didn't want to go. So my parents didn't make me. So I wound up at A.R. Johnson, and that was also another real positive experience for me because of their declining enrollment, they were small. So the faculty really got a chance to know the students, and we really got a chance to know them. And uh, there was a pride about being at A.R. Johnson because the principal and the counselors used to say, "We are not just the best Black school in Augusta; we're the best school in Augusta."
Mm.
So there was this notion that, just because you were non-white, you could still be the best, because the notion
Yeah.
back then, the white man's ice is colder. I don't know if you ever heard that
Nah, I
expression.
never heard it.
Okay, I'm gonna give you
We didn't have
education
that in
today,
Brooklyn. I
dude.
don't know. Like, tell me
Okay,
about it.
yeah, that is sort of this mentality that if it's white, it's got to be better. So
Say the
they would
saying
say the
over.
white man's ice is colder. And of
Mm.
course, ice is ice.
Right.
So
Right.
one piece of ice is just cold as the next one. But some people would have a negative perception about something that came from African Americans or operated by African Americans. And they would then make a choice to do what was done by white folks. And then people who were more aware of what was happening would say, "Well, you just think the white man's ice is colder."
Mm.
So
I
that was
like
the
that.
origin of that
I
that
like
that
that.
that statement. So A.R. Johnson taught me that the white man's ice wasn't colder because they took so much pride in what they offered students there. But it closed down because of the lower enrollment in the area and became a magnet school maybe like the year or so after I left A.R. Johnson.
Mm.
Um, I had, as I said, a really good education there. And one of the things that I picked up on when I went to school at Richmond Academy was that because I was in a predominantly Black environment at A.R. Johnson, and because they considered themselves to be the best, they afforded us opportunities that, say, a Black kid who went to Langford didn't get.
Okay.
For instance, when you start taking the more advanced courses in mathematics, the advanced track would be to have taken Algebra 1 when you were in the ninth grade. So you could do Algebra 1, Algebra 2, or maybe it was eighth grade. I can't remember. Algebra 1, Algebra 2, trigonometry. Yeah, it was 8th grade. You take Algebra 1 in the 8th grade, geometry, Algebra 2, trigonometry, calculus. Well, turns out most of those black students who went to school at Langford that I encountered when I went to Richmond Academy didn't get the chance to start Algebra 1 when they were in the 8th grade, even though they were perfectly bright. Somehow they never got that opportunity. Whereas at A.R. Johnson, we were given more of those opportunities to grow and develop, particularly if they thought that you had potential as a student. You got every opportunity to do that. So I learned that those were the advantages of being at a school that considered themselves to be the best school in
Right.
in Richmond County school system.
All right. Well, you go to ARC.
Mm-hmm.
What's that like? I don't know. Is that a white school, black school? Is it everybody? I
At
don't
that
know.
time, let's give you the quick history lesson on ARC. Of course, it was established in 1783, I believe.
So I can tell you how it started. Yeah.
Yeah, right, exactly. That's a clue. And it was a military school for white men. Then, as it evolved somewhere in the 50s, I think they allowed white girls to go there. So it was all white males into the 50s. So the white girls went to high school at Tubman. That's where they graduated. And then the boys were up the street at Richmond. So the girls were allowed to come over sometime in the 50s.
Real quick, just want to do a snapshot. I want you to continue. So what we know now and what we see it as now, whether you think about the schools, think about across the street, what you see from them schools, the activity in the area was not that all the time.
Completely different.
At some point, it was predominantly white girls and white young ladies and white young men.
Uh-huh.
Wow. Okay. This is news
think
to me.
about it, it was all white men until the 50s now.
Yeah.
So, and then the white girls came over
to Tubman
from Tubman to Richmond in the 50s. And then in the 60s, African-American students started going. In fact, one of my neighbors was among the first group of African-American students to attend Richmond Academy, and he graduated in 1966. I have another friend in Sarah here in Augusta that graduated in 1968. And she said, at the time she was in the school, it might have been 12 black students at Richmond Academy in 1968 when she graduated. By the time I got there, I graduated in 1981. So by the time I got there, it was roughly 50-50 in terms of African Americans and white students. Of course, we had a mix of just a few others, a few Asian students and things like that. And I considered it to be a really good melting pot at the time. We were so diverse in terms of economic background, the educational background of our parents. I mean, I love the fact that at Richmond Academy then, in one class, I might be sitting next to somebody that lived in a public housing complex. And then in the next class, I was sitting next to somebody whose dad was on the faculty at MCG. So I got a broad range of exposure to people from different backgrounds. And then, in one of those same classes, there would be some kid who was in a military family. His dad had just gotten transferred here, and he was from Carbondale, Illinois, or something like that. So I could sit there and ask questions of people. We were talking about interviewing people. I was interviewing them back then, and I asked people, so where are you from? And he said, I'm from Carbondale, Illinois. I was like, what's that? I didn't have a clue. And the first person I ever met that was from the islands was at Richmond Academy.
Wow.
He said, I asked him, where are you from? He said, I'm from VI. I'm like, what the heck is VI? The Virgin Islands. I was like, got it. And you would see people who had these, like a black person with like a Hawaiian name. It's like, what's up with that? Oh, my dad was stationed in Hawaii at the time I was born. So my parents just gave me a Hawaiian name. So that exposure was wonderful to me. It felt like a melting pot at the time, and I was grateful for it.
Okay. I like, I'm from a melting pot, so I can see how that was like not only interesting but just real a real good time to remember. Coming across all different types of culture and people from all different type of backgrounds. How do you think that shaped you just in life? Because you don't have like just one background. You kind of brushed up against multiple backgrounds, multiple ethnicities. So How did that shape you as a person?
It was probably the best preparation I could have had for a career in local government,
Mm.
because I was comfortable around everybody. You know, um, I didn't grow up thinking, oh, well, this person's better than that person, and I need to cater to this person more than the other one because
Right.
he or she's more important or what have you. It gave me a sense of respect for everybody and their journeys. And then being in the spotlight in a public position really gave me good preparation for that because I was used to everybody, so it was easy for me to serve everybody.
Nobody's ice was cooler to you.
Right. Nobody's ice was colder, and I knew that everybody was worthy of dignity and
Right.
respect. And I also, don't tolerate the folks that think they're more important than everybody else because I'm like, well, I know you're not.
tell me, tell me a little bit about you graduate from Richmond, okay, 81.
Mhm.
You go to school. You said Mary,
The
what was it?
College of William and Mary in Virginia.
College of William and Mary. What made you go there?
The Dean of Minority Affairs at the school just recruited students that she thought would be successful. And, you
From
take the
Virginia?
SAT. Oh, yeah, from Virginia.
I
You
wonder how.
take the SAT, and, all the schools start sending you brochures and stuff if they think you fit their
Got you.
profile. And she sent me a handwritten letter that just said, hey, we'd love for you to come visit the campus. If you can get here, we'll pay for everything else. So I was like, okay, this is a good way for me to spend spring break. So I went up there and I absolutely fell in love with it. I got a chance to meet students, obviously. I sat in on classes. I stayed in a dorm. I ate in the cafeteria. And I was like, yeah, this is me. This presents an excellent learning environment for me. And I was just in love with it from there and decided to go. Interestingly, at that time, the University of Georgia was also heavily in pursuit because they were trying to diversify their campus, and they offered me a free ride, University of Georgia. And I talked to my parents about it, and my parents had always made me a promise, and that was you can go to school wherever you want to go. So they were fully cool with me turning down a full ride to the University of
Mm.
Georgia because I wanted to be at William and Mary.
Are you a Georgia fan?
Not really.
Okay, cool. Me neither. Yeah.
Number
Clap it
one,
up
and
real
let me
quick.
put that in perspective now. I like sports, but I don't watch much college sports.
Okay.
My philosophy is, I watch them when they really are the best, when they really are pros.
Right,
At
right.
that point, I'm interested. Before that, I really don't care.
That's funny. That's funny. Oh, what did you major in college?
I started off as a government major, which is equivalent to political science. But somewhere in there, my sophomore year, I believe it was, my advisor came to me. I was sitting in class one day, and he asked me to stay after class. And of course, I'm wondering, am I in trouble for something? What's going on with this? And he said, we have started this new interdisciplinary major in public policy, and I think you'd be the ideal first person to try it. And he hands me this little fold over brochure. And I said, okay, I'll think about it. And I read over the brochure and came back the next day and told him I'd do it. So I was William and Mary's first public policy major.
Now, all right. Now, I told you I graduated from Butler High School. Now, you said a big word. So go back. You said
Interdisciplinary major.
Interdisciplinary.
Yeah,
Okay.
interdisciplinary, which is to say that I took classes in multiple departments to make up my major. And in fact, I had to design my own curriculum within the parameters that they had set. So some of it was economics, some of it was sociology, some was history, some was government.
Okay. Okay. Cool. Cool. Now, I'm just curious. Like,
Mm-hmm.
could you say you went to college at first and you was going in government, which would be
Mm-hmm.
equivalent to political science?
Mm-hmm.
But what was it about your
Why
life,
did I make
what
the
you knew?
switch?
Yeah. Like, why? No,
Yeah.
not the switch, but
But
just in government in
well,
general.
why
Like,
did I
what?
even start there?
Yeah. Like, what made you?
Okay, yeah, that's an easy one. Remember I told you about how, in my house we were addicted to the newspaper?
Okay.
So I remember reading an article when I was in high school. I was probably 10th or 11th grade, or maybe even before that. It might have been more like ninth or 10th. When Jimmy Carter was president, he appointed Patricia Roberts Harris as a cabinet level secretary, and I think she was in either HUD or Health and Human Services,
Mm-hmm.
somewhere in there. So again, it was this black woman that was in charge of policy for a president related to creating better living conditions for people, focused on housing, human services, just building better people, the
Right.
federal government's role. She was in charge of the federal government's role in building better people. Well, I'll be darned. A black woman's doing that. And that was another one of those things that made me say, hey, I want to do something government related. Not quite sure what at that time, was not honed in on that. But I like that idea of providing services, using tax dollars to provide services that improve quality of life for folks. So that
Okay.
resonated with me as a high schooler.
The newspaper. What was it? Was it a mandatory thing in the household to read the newspaper? Did y'all not have TV? I had TV.
Oh yeah, TV was on too because we were watching the news as well. Yeah,
So
all
it was
that
just
was
news
on.
all through the house.
We just had news. Yeah, we had news. Uh, and was it forced on me? No,
But
it was just there. So I
gravitated
read
towards
it.
that.
Yeah, it was there. I read it.
Ain't nothing wrong with that.
Yeah.
I was just curious because, like, a lot of times, during that, I don't know about that time, but just when you got TV people watching, music, Soul Train, all that. Not saying you didn't watch that.
And I watched Soul Train too.
Okay.
I watched Soul Train too.
Just making sure.
Yeah,
I'm just curious how you got to where you at, because I know, like,
Yeah.
some people have a story behind, like, oh, I got this because this happened or this happened. But as you're talking, it's so much history and kind of government related history around you. I kind of feel like you was kind of born to kind of do that, like
groomed. Yeah. To a degree, I was groomed. Definitely groomed to be aware of what was going on in the community, which again kind of fits in with everything that I've done since that time. But yeah, it wasn't so much you've got to read this paper. It was like, it's there. Let's pick it up and read it and let's see what's going on.
Now, I want to get into some stuff real quick, but I don't want to skip over this because you spoke so well about some things that were interesting to me. I kind of skipped that part, but, like, just do tell me about your household. You live with your mom and your dad, and then what were they like?
What were they like? Okay, yeah, that's a good question too.
I try to do good questions every now and then.
Yeah,
only every now and then.
That's a great question. Well, I was asking, what were they like? My mother, and I've given this some thought recently. I mean, I could write a book about both of them. So we'll try to limit it to what we can do here. Let's start with mom. Mom was the 7th of 13 kids born in Saluda, South Carolina, and in the 1920s, because my parents got married later. I'm an only child of older parents. So before I was born, she had finished high school, finished college, taught school for a number of years. She's a middle school educator. Had taught every grade at some point or another, but middle school was her focus. And she was sort of the tiger mom. People talk about the Asian tiger moms. She was the black tiger mom. It's sweet person, but definitely had her expectations. And one of the things that is most remarkable about my mother is that she was the only one of her parents' children to graduate from college. And she would say that she decided real early on, I mean, like 4th or 5th grade, that she was going to college because she just, didn't see herself ever doing domestic work, didn't see herself ever working in a field. I'm headed to college because I like what these teachers are doing. They're clean and dressed up every day, and I'm going to be one of those. So that was her path to becoming an educator, with a whole bunch of other things happening in between. My father worked more jobs / careers than any human being ever. He's the stereotype about the Jamaicans and the 12 jobs.
I was gonna say that. He's a hay man.
Yeah, he's one of those. He grew up in a farm in Burke County, right down the road.
Oh wow. Okay.
Worked on the farm, obviously worked in a sawmill at one point, was a soldier, obviously went off to World War II. Worked when he got out of war, he worked in New Jersey for a while for DuPont Corporation, which was the biggest door opener ever for him. But worked in DuPont as like a machine operator or something. Got laid off, moved back to Georgia, started a cab driving business And people laugh when I tell them that. Say, what's a black-owned cab business in Waynesboro, Georgia? I said, it was a thing. Trust me, in 1950s, it was a thing
Yeah.
because my father and his brother did it. And he was also like the fifth of 10 kids. And he then, when so what is now called Savannah River site in 1953, I believe it was, 52, 53, somewhere in there, they opened, and DuPont had a contract with the federal government to operate it. So he found out, DuPont, wait a minute, I got laid off from DuPont. Let me go, years prior. When he was in New Jersey, I got laid off from DuPont. So he went out there and they said, oh, yeah, you should be the first hired since you were laid off from DuPont previously.
Oh,
So
wow.
went to work in DuPont at DuPont as a janitor. And he said he would walk in every day and realize he was one of the lowest paid people at the plant. And he would say, I don't like being one of the lowest paid people at the plant. So let me go find something else to do. So, and this is at the height of segregation, it's mid 50s. He goes to talk to whoever, and, higher level, talk to somebody. And he said, hey, I wanted to go do something higher than being a janitor. What can I do? And the person says, well, maybe you can join the paint crew. And he said, oh, that's cool with me because my uncle is a painter, so I know a little bit about that. So he went to work on the paint crew for a while. And then he said, well, I want to do something higher. So the maintenance mechanic training program became available to African Americans because first black men couldn't do it. So when they made it available for African Americans, he's like, yep, volunteer. I want to do that. So he became a maintenance mechanic. And that afforded, all of us a much better lifestyle because that paid probably twice as much as being a janitor did. So he was that type of striving person. Both of my parents were those types of striving people that always looked, what's the next best thing that I can get done? And we lived through that. He retired from Savannah River Plant in 1986 as a maintenance mechanic. And in the meantime, his spare moments, he started a painting business on the side. So he had his full-time job and pretty much a full-time side gig for most of my life.
What I get from what you said though just now was like not only did he want better, but he was willing to do
I was willing to do whatever
more.
he had to do. He willing to do whatever he had to do.
And I think and just in today I always compare. It's like people that want better, want more, but they're not willing to do.
Exactly.
Oh,
Yeah,
I ain't paying. Oh, I ain't doing that.
Yeah,
I ain't picking no trash. I ain't.
He was the complete opposite. Do whatever I got to do.
And I think it just and when you think about times and eras, and obviously there's other factors that contribute to that. I just think that when you want it better, it was a point in life where, especially for us, if you want it better, you had to be willing to do better, And it wasn't never mind, because now you look like you don't want to do anything, and they might be out of it at that point. But even me being in corporate America now, like I have people come to me all the time, yo, I need to make more money. I will do this. Oh, no, I ain't doing that.
Yeah,
all right, well.
yeah, right, yeah.
What you want me to do?
Right, exactly. And I've seen the same, obviously, supervising people. But no, he was the ultimate hustler. On a scale of 1 to 10 at hustle, he was 100.
Oh, I like that.
Because he would do whatever he had to do. And probably he's been deceased now since 2008. But I will say this. I think the biggest compliment you could have ever paid my father was, my child has never been hungry. So, I mean, that was what he lived for.
I like that.
To be able to say that my kid ain't hungry.
I like that. Clap it up for your pops. I like that. And I think too, like, I like the fact that, you say you're an only child, right? And your parents come from a lot of children, a lot of children. Now you said 5 of 10, and
my father was 5 of 10,
7 of 13.
7 of 13.
Those are some fractions, those are some fractions, This is, we could break those down a little bit, Those could be simplified. So it's a lot. But definitely, I know that time and era, that's what people did. They had kids and go from there. But I want to get into just your life in government. So after college, what do you do? Like, what's your you give me your father's. What's your rundown of things you've done?
Yeah, I was tired of school after I graduated from undergrad. I finished. I was like, I don't want to.
I'm done.
I know eventually I want to go back and get a master's degree, but I don't want to do it right now. So got a job that I really liked in Richmond, Virginia. Got my first little apartment in Richmond, Virginia.
Okay, shout out to you.
I was living in a high-rise apartment called Monroe Park Towers. The building actually is still there now. And I was living on the 16th floor, scared of heights, but I was living on the 16th floor. And I got that experience. And Richmond is, it's bigger than Augusta, but it's not like a huge, huge city.
Yeah, it's not.
Which was probably a good transition point for me because it was, big enough that there was something to do and see, but still slow enough for me to navigate at that time. So I worked in a downtown. It was a nonprofit organization that worked for towards downtown improvement in Richmond, Virginia. We did a lot of cool projects and stuff. I got a chance to use my skills very well. And during the time I was in Richmond, one day I was 23 years old. I was sitting in my one-bedroom apartment, and I was watching the news. Believe it or not, I was watching the news, and I saw that Richmond was going through a search for a city manager. And I was just listening to the council people talk about what they were looking for in a manager and just describing what the job was. And I said to myself, I could do that. So that was kind of just set my goal that day. I wanted to be a city manager. So I went on back to graduate school at Duke University, finished that program in a couple of years.
Hold on. I'm sorry. I had to break a scratch. You went to Duke?
Uh-huh.
My favorite school.
I'm a Blue Devil.
Okay. Hey, I love the Blue Devils. Okay. That's what I'm talking about, man. You went to Duke. That's a big deal. You know that. That's a big deal.
Yeah. Uh-huh.
Oh, wow. Okay. I'm sorry.
I've never been inside Cameron Indoor Stadium, but I went
Hey,
to
I'm
Duke.
you went to school and got good grades?
Got good grades.
Right.
Got on out of there. And I will say it's kind of interesting. I think it just had to do with my stage in life. I mean, I don't feel terribly attached to the school. It was just like, I'm in graduate school. I want to get in and get
not
out.
For school pride. You was
Yeah,
there to
I
get
was
something
there.
done.
And I tell people like I'm a Blue Devil, but it's not like I was running around rah-rah Duke or anything. And
I'm
just
a Blue Devil sound better than I'm a Georgia Bulldog. I'm just throwing it out there. I'm not dissing the Bulldog. I'm just saying, that sounds so cool
Yeah.
to me. You got 5 points to me just now. Just
go Beans.
You've been racking them up all day, but yeah, you got 5 points just for being a Blue Devil. Okay, so you said being a city manager, and what happened with that? Did you ever end up doing that, or
Oh yeah,
in Virginia, or came back home?
Did my first local government job when I came out of Duke in Prince George's County, Maryland, which is right outside of DC.
So you had to move, so
Yeah,
you just moved.
Yeah, I did a lot of moving.
So when you went to
Speaking of
Duke-
doing what you got to do, I did a lot
Got that
of
from your
moving.
dad.
Uh-huh.
So when you went to Duke, you changed. You lived in Virginia still?
No. I was there because back then there was no such thing as online education or anything.
Yes,
So
it had to
yeah,
be there.
I left. I lived in Richmond, Virginia from 85 to 87. Started school at Duke in 1987, completed 1989. And then in 1989, I moved to Prince George's County, Maryland.
Okay, and then from when you moved to Maryland, you moved because of the position?
Of the job, yeah.
Okay.
Moved there because of the job. Again, doing what you got to do. Because one of the things I learned about city manager careers is that you need to be mobile.
Gotcha.
Because you never know where the best opportunity is going to be for you.
And I don't know if it's a new term for it now. 'Cause I never heard of that. I'm just going city manager. What does that mean?
Okay. Let me explain what that is.
Please.
The city manager is the person that oversees the day-to-day operations of your government. So, which is to say, you may elect a mayor and a council or commission or whatever it's called in that particular city, but typically they hire somebody who oversees the employees and makes sure that services get provided in the way that they're supposed to be provided.
Mm-hmm.
So, the charters of each organization has what's called a charter. It's a written document that describes the responsibilities and powers of each office. It depends upon the charter. Like in Augusta, there's an administrator, but there's not a city manager. And the powers of an administrator are fewer than the powers of a city manager. Preferably you're in an environment where a city manager, you're responsible for hiring and firing of department directors. You're responsible for making sure that they do their jobs. You can take disciplinary action, et cetera, et cetera. So, when I came to that realization, basically it's like being a CEO. It's really like being the CEO of the city. So in the purest form of government, manager, council government, the city manager is the CEO and makes the major decisions.
What is that like though? Like, I mean, because you got mayors, you got all
You got
these
mayor and council,
head of something, but
and
now you're
and
and
this is
you
the distinction. This is the distinction. Mayor and council are there to set policy, which is to say, if they decide that, let's give you one, grass cutting or demolition of structures or planning and zoning decisions. They make policy decisions that say, hey, this particular area of the city is going to be zoned residential. Over there, it's going to be zoned commercial. So businesses can go over there and houses need to go here. Or this property is zoned R3 or whatever the classification is in your system. So apartments can go here. So the mayor and council are elected to make major decisions like that. Land use decisions for your area. They're elected to decide that, hey, it's against the law for you to let your grass grow 3 feet high,
Gotcha.
and they set what the penalty, can set what the penalties may be for that through a code of ordinances. So you got a city attorney that's going to write up the ordinance, and the mayor and council are going to pass that ordinance, and then the city manager is going to enforce it, which is to say
okay.
that you got a code enforcement department or a planning department or whatever we're talking about at that particular time. The city manager is going to work through those departments reporting to him or her to make sure that it's carried out the way that the mayor and commission have laid it out.
Just an example. So let's say it just the grass gotta be 3 or 4. So do they drive around just trying to check people's grass?
Code enforcement is driving around to check people's grass.
Oh wow, that's still a job. That's still a thing.
Oh yeah, it's a real thing.
Even in here.
Oh yeah, it's a real thing here.
Well, how much they get paid? So you just drive and you.
Yeah, it's a little bit more complicated than that,
okay.
but yeah, it's a little bit. But that's part of the job.
But
literally,
you don't have to, you get
they're
out the car?
driving around. They got a little tablet or laptop or whatever in the vehicle, and they're saying, "Oh, at this particular address, grass is too high. Let's write up a citation and leave it at their door."
What?
Yeah.
Wow, this is news to me. This is crazy.
Yeah.
I'm not a grass cutter at all. Like, I mean, I get it cut, because I got my politics connection.
But yeah, if it's
but,
your grass is too high, yeah, you can get a citation.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Get a citation.
I gotta look into that because I like to
Or
drive
if
around.
you have a junk vehicle, you get a citation. Why is that vehicle there and it doesn't have current registration or insurance? It's
I got
considered
you.
junk if there's no current registration or insurance.
Okay.
So yeah, there are folks in this here in Augusta. The marshal's office does some of that too, like junk vehicles. The marshal's office handles. But yeah, if you're annoyed because your neighbor's got 3 junk vehicles in the yard, they haven't moved in a year. The marshal's office can come and write them a ticket.
Just curiosity, what would make somebody be annoyed with that? Like, would it bother them, or just because you're
It
next to
just
your
doesn't
house?
look very good.
I got you.
Yeah,
Okay.
it's just
Got you.
junky. It doesn't look very good. So it takes away from the attractiveness of your neighborhood.
Got you. It makes sense. Property value and things of that nature. How long you did this? How long?
Really, most of my life in local government.
So city manager, city manager for a long time?
I didn't start as a city manager because it's one of those things where you got to work your way up. But when I went to Prince George's County, I was, I called myself, I was a small fish in a big pond. And then I became assistant city manager in Albany, Georgia, just out of nowhere, just applied for the job. And they called me and I got it. So I became the assistant city manager in Albany. So then I became a big fish in a small pond is the way I like to look at that. But that was one of the best experiences for me ever because the organization was big enough that I could get exposed to various aspects of running an organization, and I learned just so much. It was such a learning laboratory for me, as well as getting some experience that I wouldn't have gotten otherwise. And I love working with the people. The thing I said earlier about working with a diverse array of people. That's what working at Albany gave me a chance to do, and folks were very supportive because they just really appreciated someone who was, a big fish, treating them with that type of respect and dignity and taking their phone calls and talking to them in a restaurant and stuff. We had a little restaurant, soul food. It just closed down recently, but it was one of the best soul food restaurants ever in Albany, Georgia, called Carter's Grill. And I would come through there about once a week for lunch. and it was like, cafeteria style or whatever. So they would fix your tray. You tell them, hey, I want rutabagas and black eyed peas and collard greens today or whatever. And the ladies that were handing me the stuff, they would say, hey, Miss Allen, I got a problem with X. And I would talk to them while I'm in the lunch line about their problem with X. And I loved it and they loved it.
That's dope. That's dope.
Yeah, it really was dope.
How and what year did you move? Did you go?
I moved to Albany in 1993.
Okay, so that wasn't too long.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, 1993.
At any point do you ever come back to Augusta, or you just always stayed away?
Yeah, I went from Albany to Charlotte. I was an assistant county manager in Charlotte, North Carolina, for Mecklenburg County government, and then I moved from Charlotte to Augusta in 2014, and came in as their administrator.
Did you like Charlotte? Was it cool?
I like Charlotte and I don't like Charlotte. And let me explain what that means. Quality of life in Charlotte is outstanding. It has grown a lot since that time. So it's a little bit more difficult to navigate than it was, a few years ago. But the growth of the community and what they have to offer, they have traffic and crime, but it's nowhere near what you would find in the Washington, D.C. area or in Metro Atlanta. But you still got stuff. I mean, like, we still go up there now. You want to see a play or whatever, we go to Charlotte to do that. You want to go see the Panthers or go see the Hornets or whatever, we go up to Charlotte to do that. Like, a lot of people's default is, they go to Atlanta.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I go to Charlotte.
Same distance.
Same distance and less traffic, and you still see an NBA game or an NFL game or touring Broadway play or whatever. So that's the upside to Charlotte. The downside is, I made that comment earlier about you can learn a lot about a city about whether they had a riot in the 60s or 70s. Charlotte didn't have a riot. Charlotte is one of the cities where the African American community is relatively silent.
Silent.
Yeah.
Got you. That makes that statement different than when I thought. Okay. Now I see what you're saying when you say that. Got you. Okay, make more sense now when you say it that way.
But the quality of life is excellent. But it's just some people, and not just Black people. I heard a white person, she called it, Charlotte is a city without a soul. And I said, I'd be darned, that's absolutely correct.
A city without a soul.
Uh-huh.
Okay. And they silent. They just don't, they ain't just speaking about this, whatever.
And to give you a couple examples. When we moved to Charlotte, my kids were very young. Like, my daughter was in daycare. My son was a first grader. And the superintendent who was in place at that time was an African-American man. And then he retired, and the school board searched, for a new superintendent. Didn't even have a Black finalist in the group. And nobody said boo. And then it was the next superintendent and the next superintendent, and they never had a Black one again until, my son was in college the next time they hired a Black superintendent in Charlotte.
Nobody batted an eye. Nobody fought for nothing. Nobody.
Right.
No kind of.
Right.
Nothing.
And this is a school system that has become increasingly a school system of color.
Makes sense now. Now I get it. Now I get it. Okay.
Yeah.
Cool. So I'm pretty sure you come back home. You was happy. Happy to come back to Augusta.
Happy to be back in Augusta, because I wasn't one of these people that swore Augusta off. Some people will say, I'm never moving back to Augusta again. There's nothing for me there. And I'm just like,
but did you ever visit?
Do you know that there are much worse places you could be than Augusta, GA?
Did you ever visit? Like, come back and forth during
to Augusta?
Yeah.
Oh yeah. My father now been deceased 15 years. My mother has been, well, maybe a little longer. Let me think about that. He died in 2008. So whatever that is, I can't do math right now.
That's 15.
Yeah, it's 15. And my mother's been deceased for 10. So while they were still living, I was coming back on a
Okay,
regular
gotcha,
basis.
gotcha. So I want to talk about Augusta and Augusta and politics. So, I guess it's a good time to bring. You came back 2014,
Hmm.
right? Um, Before you started, your podcast and
Mm.
what you do, what was your thoughts on just Augusta politics, in general, like in the city? Pros, cons, good,
Being
bad.
completely honest, uh, there are people who I'll try to remain nameless and anonymous, but there are people who would always say that they the craziest politics ever in Augusta, Georgia. Um, some of it is structural in terms of the way the local government is set up.
Hmm.
It's set up to be dysfunctional because it's like a three-headed monster. And I could get, if you want me to, I can get into some real detail about that. But it's set up to be dysfunctional in many ways. It's not set up to work.
What describe that three-headed monster you talk about?
You've got an administrator, which is the role I had. You've got a commission, and you've got a mayor. And the charter kind of leaves all three of them in charge in one way or another, and that's why I call it the three-headed monster.
So is it no checks and balances, like with that, or
It's
besides what we heard
it's
about?
either no checks and balances or it's too many. And
Ah,
one of the reasons that I say that is because of how we got here with the consolidated government. There was the old city of Augusta and there was Richmond County up until 1996. So the old city of Augusta had basically gone financially bankrupt because of a mayor that didn't have enough checks and balances.
mm-hmm.
I mean, he went bankrupt and nobody knew it because they didn't have enough checks and balances on the mayor. So when they created this new government, they had to put more checks and balances on the mayor. So they named a role of mayor, but they didn't really give it any responsibilities.
And this is what time frame we talking when you
This is
say?
in the mid 90s,
Okay, okay, okay.
1996, when the consolidated government went
Gotcha.
into effect. So the mayor is sort of kind of a full time job. And the code says that the mayor has responsibility for enforcing some ordinances and things like that. It does say that, but he doesn't have any supervisory responsibility over staff.
Mm.
So it's like, okay, well, what's that supposed to mean
Yeah,
in
that's not really making
practice?
sense to me.
Yeah, and then I understand that they didn't even create an administrative role when they first consolidated the government, but then the elected officials showed up and they looked around and go, well, who's going to run the place? Somebody's got to be in charge of the
Right.
day-to-day operations, and that's when they created an administrative position, but they didn't give it all the responsibilities of a traditional city manager form of government.
Okay.
And then you got a commission that passes all the ordinances and is supposed to be setting policy for the organization. But and you also you set it up so that the department directors, while on a day-to-day basis, are supposed to be reporting to the administrator can't fire them. Only the commission can fire them. So it's just all kind of jumbled up.
Yeah.
and that has contributed to the difficulty of the politics. I had some people, again, get to those folks who shall remain nameless. Like a couple of people say, you survived 5 years with the Augusta Commission? Those people are crazy. So.
I've spoke to some people in government that's currently there. I think I spoke with Jordan Johnson
Mm-hmm.
one time. I told you Ben Hassan, spoke to him.
Mm-hmm.
I did find that it's always better, in my opinion. You get more real, raw, uncut answers for someone who's out of office than somebody
Oh
who's
yeah, for
currently still
sure,
in.
for sure.
I mean, and I like Jordan Johnson as the person. He's a cool guy. But I mean, sometimes you ask a question, you're like, all right, so you don't give me an answer or not, because I don't know what the hell you just said, but you spoke for 3 minutes, and then you said some good words, you know what I'm saying? But what does that mean?
Mm-hmm.
But you don't want to, push.
Mm-hmm.
So I learned and you podcast. I'm getting a segment. You podcast and you talk with those people a lot.
Mm-hmm.
5 years of doing that. I don't know how you do podcasts with them because I can't do it. I be want to throw the computer away sometimes. Like, why didn't he answer this question? Why didn't she answer this question? They asked to come on here and they chose not to. But I want to ask a political question real quick. Then I want to get into the podcast. I have to notice, and I know it can't be the truth. So I spoke to multiple commissioners. They say they don't make no money. Now, I mean that they're saying, like, I guess there's no money involved in it. I don't know, but I just don't feel like that can't. Is that really true for real? Like, is it no money in that?
when you say it is a lower salary, it is
Okay.
less than $25,000 a year.
But
That's what that means.
so if you do that job, you need to have another job.
Oh yeah, yeah. And
How's that possible? Like,
that is problematic. This is what it's about. I'm going to tell you what it's designed to be, and then I'll tell you kind of what happens in
Okay.
reality. What it's designed to be is that being a commissioner is a part-time public service opportunity. You're like basically a paid volunteer. The goal is because what's supposed to be is because you're only in a policy making role, it's not intended to be a full-time job.
Got you.
It is intended that, you come to the meetings, obviously, every Tuesday, and plus the special call meetings whenever those take place. And you've given voluminous information. I'm telling you, and I'll say, I know because we were responsible for putting it together. All those decisions that they have to
What's
make.
that word you said? A what?
All those decisions they have to make.
Before that, you said a voluminous.
Voluminous document.
What
I
does
was
that
getting
mean?
to what happens when you. Yeah, it's like it might be 600 pages per meeting of materials to get you prepared for that meeting.
Got you. Okay.
So the staff has prepared all this information because obviously if the commission has got to make decisions, we as staff, we are responsible for making sure that they have the information they need to make sound decisions. So by the time you go through 30 or 35 agenda items, it might be, 30 pages of information per item. So you wind up with this huge document. And if they really want to get prepared to vote on those issues, they need to have become familiar with them. So yeah, they might sit there. The time consuming piece is sitting there having to read a 300 or 400 or 500 or 600 page meeting agenda packet. So that's time consuming. Being in the meetings themselves can be time consuming because, folks don't stop talking and you could be there for 5 or 6 hours. And then there's all the public events and things that they go to. Oh, we want them to come to this ribbon cutting and that grand opening and
Kissing babies.
So yeah, the opportunities to shake hands and kiss babies. So it gets to be time consuming for that reason, but just the policy making aspect of it really is supposed to be just as a part-time thing.
Is that why a lot of commissioners be like old?
That is exactly why, which is exactly what I was going to get into. When I came in as administrator, I think everybody, maybe with the exception of one or two of them, all of them were over 60. They were retirees.
Yeah.
And you set yourself up, and it's not just Augusta. It is every other local government pretty much in the United States of America where you have this structure where they're supposed to be part-time this is the way I put it, it's real direct. In order to serve in public office like that, you either have to be independently wealthy, retired, or poor and don't care. It's really not for somebody who's working a full-time job.
Gotcha.
Because let's say, your job, working in retail. I mean, you couldn't just leave your job every Tuesday for 5 or 6 hours. Your bosses might have a problem with that.
Yeah, definitely.
Or you taking off to go, oh yeah, we got this, grand opening.
It's a cookout down the street.
It's such and such and such and such. And, you need to go. Like my neighborhood had something, and we can get into that too, hopefully later on. I had a big event. I hosted a big event in my neighborhood Thursday morning. Well, 2 of our commissioners and the mayor were there because we wanted them on the program to make remarks.
Right.
But, how many people have jobs that would allow them to do that? So that's why a lot of them wind up being self-employed because then they're have more control over their own time, or they're retired where they don't have to clock in anywhere, or they're independently wealthy where they ain't got to work no job.
Right.
I've had a few of those, types of elected officials in the past. Or when I say poor and don't care, it's like, no, I don't really have a regular job, and I don't care if I don't have a regular job, so I can show up at stuff.
Got you. Okay. And I asked that question. I was thinking maybe it was some kind of money they were receiving somehow, somewhere. I'm not saying they're doing something corrupt. I don't know. I'm not going that route, but maybe you get paid XYZ to pop up here, or that picture, or that arm around somebody. Like, you got likeness at that point. You can use that. So I thought maybe it was something more to it, but I talked to multiple commissioners and they all said the same thing. So
Yeah.
I'm a.
Yeah. The paycheck is small.
Okay. Well, now that you say it,
Uh-huh.
I'm gonna believe it.
Yeah.
Don't expect to be Hassan but he, that's my guy. But when you being someone who was in charge of checks and balances, the real. So
Yeah.
okay, cool,
Paycheck
cool.
is small, and the demands can be pretty significant. And how that skews who's there, because poor and don't care, retired, independently wealthy, and self-employed. That's not a broad representation
At all.
of any community.
Yeah.
But that's what you wind
It's
up
very
with.
hit or miss, honestly.
Yeah.
Very hit or miss.
So your body of elected officials is not going to be representative of the population in any city or town or county in the United States.
Okay. So I want to get into you as a podcaster. You podcasting. First, what went into that thought process of, you know what, I want to speak on these things, even though I was in government for a long time. I want to continue to speak on it, especially on a local level. What went into that in building that podcast?
Like a lot of other good things that happen to you happen almost by accident.
Right.
I was talking to somebody one day and she said, you should build your brand. It would build your brand to have your own radio show. And I start thinking about radio. I am on the radio. I'm on WKZK on Wednesday afternoons and Thursday evenings. I thought about it and I was just sort of like, okay, building brand sounds pretty good, but what in the heck would I talk about? Because I'm not that much of a talker. I tell everybody I'm the person I like to cook. So I'm the person who will make some waffles and frittatas and tell people to come over for brunch. And they do all the talking. I never get a word in edgewise. So I had to start my own show so I could talk. It's kind of what I said. So I could talk. Because I don't talk like that. And but I thought about it for a few months, and because it took a while for me to get my ideas together. I have to kind of know where I want to go. I don't just start something not knowing where I want to go.
Big commitment.
And one day I was talking to Reverend KB Martin, just retired from Antioch Baptist Church, and he was just talking about how folks don't go to the polls, and if they go, they don't know what they're doing when they get there. And it was like that's when the light went off. There's a need in terms of getting information out there, and I have the expertise to get it, to give it. So that was how it came about.
What went into the title? You told my title, but I like your title.
Yeah, Local Matters. It is because you will hear people say in a presidential election year, they will be saying, I've got to go to polls because I got to vote this joker out. You don't hear the same enthusiasm at the local level most of the time.
Yep.
And people fail to realize how much people at the local level, elected officials at the local level, control your quality of life. You think about basic stuff like your potholes, your storm drainage, your recreation services, and most importantly, your public safety services and your utilities, your clean water supply, which you need to live, your garbage pickup. All that's decided by people at the local level. So that's why I said local matters.
See, that thing I thought it was a double entendre because yes, local matters, but then I'm pretty sure you talk about local matter like local issues or whatever the case may be. So it's like,
and it is a double. Yeah, it is. It does have a double meaning.
I like that.
Yeah,
I like that a lot. And then I went doing research and even the guest you had on it's all cognizant to what the title is and what your mission statement, quote unquote, is for the podcast. So I like that. Anytime somebody can do that, because people don't realize how hard that is. Because people think because you got a podcast, you got your microphones, you got this. Hey, you should talk about such and such. Yeah, but that don't fit what I'm gonna do. That's a good conversation, but that don't fit what I'm trying to do.
Right.
Like you should have such and such on. Good person, speaks well, but I don't know how that's gonna mesh with what I'm doing.
Right.
Maybe I could, get that person with such and such because that podcast might work for that. So it's a lot go into that. Like, and you manage though, so you've been doing it for a while. Is that something that's difficult or challenging for you to do? Like guest wise, picking guests, maybe not picking a guest, maybe overlooking a guest or turning down a guest, or
Yeah, I have to think about it because I have people giving me suggestions. Just like you said, why don't you have so and so and so? I'm like, well, what's he gonna talk about? How is this connected to state or local government? Because I cover state issues too. How's this gonna connect to state and local government? I mean, what does this have to do with anything? And so I make sure that even if people don't first see the connection, but by the time the program's over, by the time the episode's done, they'll see what the connection was.
That's beautifully said, and I feel like when you talk about the title "Local Matters," I think local can be perspective as well. Because local, we
Hmm.
can say Augusta, but maybe somebody from Georgia is just watching, right? And
Yeah.
local would be all of Georgia at that point.
Hmm.
If you're talking about United States, it's local because it's domestic.
Yeah,
It's
right,
all
right. If
perspective,
you're talking public safety, that's a local government service
right?
anywhere in the United States.
Exactly.
Education, same thing. I've done a few episodes on education because everybody's got a thought about
Hmm.
education, and we're paying a lot of money for those education services through our tax dollars. So, and it's such a need,
Yeah.
So I've focused on that. But yeah, somebody in California might find that just as interesting as somebody in Augusta, Georgia did.
Well, I'm curious on. I know you spoke about the polls and things of that nature. Um, I was going to after you said I had a talking point. Whereas, people when it's presidential election time, they want to vote somebody out or vote somebody in or say, I'm tired of this happening. But on that level of voting, you still aren't fixing the issue that's directly affecting you, right? So that local government, the local elections, um, uh, they they it's a word I'm looking for. I just can't think right now. But yeah, okay, those directly affect you way more than Trump or Obama or the president we got now. I don't know. What's his name?
Joe Biden.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I'm not crazy. I'm not crazy. But yeah, in them now, they don't see. And I'm real big on local. Like
Hmm.
I once
Good.
I got to know talking to Kim Bacon, and I started to do my research and on his podcast, listening to even you and certain
Mm-hmm.
people that was on there, and y'all pushed a lot of the
Mm-hmm.
He pushed a lot of local. I always kind of step back from that, and then I go into more of the commissioners, go into more of what this job mean, who would call. And that's why when you said the AED earlier in ours
Mm-hmm.
in the SWAT one, I was so interested because I'm so interested in local things because I feel like it's so much local information, local quote unquote matters,
Mm-hmm.
and local people that are in charge of these local matters that we don't know about.
Right.
And I think any platform, but definitely your platform is a great platform to learn those things. So, would you? What would you consider your platform to be? Is it entertainment? Is it educational? Is it just conversation based? Is it
It's education. It
education?
really is education. I am hoping to help you learn more so that you feel like you have more control over your quality of life.
When you and when you say quality of life, what does that mean to you when you say quality of life?
Let's talk about something that we talked about during our swap cast, and you talked about traffic safety, for
Mm-hmm.
instance. That is a quality of life issue. If you're
Mm.
driving down the road and you don't think you're safe, your quality of life's not very good. If it floods in your yard every time there's a heavy rain, your quality of life's gonna be bad.
Mm.
So that's what I mean by that. If
Okay.
you feel like you've got kids, there's no place for the kids to play safely, that affects your quality of life. So those are the type of things that I would use as examples.
Uh, So far on the success level, like have you found that you've had are you more likable? Let me say that. Are you more likable podcast wise, or are you more likable managing wise, city management?
Nobody's ever asked me that question in life, but let me say, I think I'm the same in either environment. I think what I offer in either environment is one, credibility.
Mm.
I'm not experimenting with you. I've done all this
I know this
before.
for real.
So the level of experience and sincerity with which I approach both,
Got you.
I think makes me sort of either equally likable in either one of those environments.
You know, like I said, we've had conversation, not real conversation, because
Hmm.
I remember I've seen Ken on yours, I've seen you on Kim Makin's, and you don't know, but you watching, you
Mm-hmm.
looking, you listening. Then I seen Karen last year. She posted this big post, and it was yours. And I'm not gonna lie, the podcast. I was like, hold up, who's the other person Karen posting the podcast? Who is this? I liked it. I was like, okay, well, let me see what she did. And then she actually reached out right at that same time. Matter of fact, she texted us and she was like, hey, this is Jermaine, James, this is Jermaine. Y'all should link up, da da da. And it's beautiful to see how things work when you talk about just on the politics side, and not just judicially and all that in lawmaking, but just relationships. When you
Mm-hmm.
think about politics and like what Karen means to the city, what you mean to the city. Y'all two know each other, me knowing Karen, now me knowing you,
Mm-hmm.
and what that could mean for as connections and
Mm-hmm.
all that stuff. And to me, that's the best thing about what I do in media. For you, what is the best thing about what you're doing, podcast wise, podcast driven, um, with local matters?
That is a good one. That the idea of connections, because I thought I knew a lot of people when I was administrator, and now I'm learning there were a whole bunch of people that
Right,
I didn't
right,
know.
right.
So broadening that circle is really good. One of the other things for me personally that's been very rewarding, I can get really, really excited when I get a call from somebody that's out of town to tell me either they want to be on the show or that they heard something on the show that is impacting policy somewhere.
Mm,
I don't know if you know Donna Moraine. She is with the Augusta Justice Cooperative, I think is the name of the organization that she set up. And she is a court watcher, basically. I mean, she sits in state court and observes some of the awful things that happen to people in the courts
mm.
and things that she perceives to be really unfair. And she tracks legislation in regard to that. And Donna keeps a really low profile, but she wanted to be on the show. And I actually did 2 episodes with her. And I called it When Poverty Sends You to Jail, Parts 1 and 2. Because some of these people are in jail just because they can't bail them. Nobody can bail them out. They can't bail themselves out. I saw Donna a month or 2 ago, and she said that she got a call from somebody on the Senate, or some Senate, U.S. Senate committee in Washington that had heard her conversation on my podcast, and they were using that to help shape legislation.
Oh, that's dope. I clap it up for that. That is amazing.
Yeah. So
That
that's
is
like the
amazing.
greatest thing ever.
That's an amazing feeling. Out of all snippets to use of all podcasts, like they chose yours, which means that you're doing you're credible, like you said,
Mm-hmm.
and then 2, people are watching. People
Yep.
are watching. I think
Yep.
that's we don't talk about that a lot as podcasts a lot, but because of course, the cool thing to do is say, I don't care about the views. Of course, everybody say that because
Yeah.
naturally, those hard to come by. We gotta fight for all of them, right?
Mm-hmm.
But I'm the person that I really don't, and I'm pretty. I just from talking to you, I'm pretty sure you don't either. I care about impact, and
Yeah,
that's
right.
impact.
Exactly.
That's like a
Exactly. That's
perfect
impact.
example. You can't really measure that until you start saying, "Well, this happened, and they used my
Mm-hmm.
podcast on this."
Yes.
That's impact. Somebody calling you and saying, "Yo, I listened to this and I did this and this happened." That's
Right.
impact. A view ain't gonna show you that. I can have
Right.
200,000 and not have an impact at all,
Right.
but I can have 46 and be impacting 4 or 5 people's lives, and I'm gonna take that any day.
Right. Exactly.
Um, so what? And you asked me this. I want to ask you this. I always ask this question, and you put me on the spot after Nick. I wasn't expecting it to be asked, but what would be your favorite podcast that you have done? Your favorite guest you had on so far?
Okay. Well, I'm going to actually reference something where I didn't have a guess. One of the things I always do after big elections is I have an analysis episode where I
Okay.
talk about why folks won and lost.
That's
So
dope.
those are the ones. It's sort of like a rapid fire. It's like, oh yeah, he won because he better connected with his voters. He lost because there was some rumor of a scandal that really brought him down. The other person won because they were just really, really well organized and had a well-funded campaign, those sort of stuff. So I like those election analysis episodes, just generally. And I've had, several of them, obviously. So those are the ones I like. Another one I like, it's like former Mayor Bob Young. Bob is a staunch Republican. And we sat there one year after Kemp beat Stacey Abrams the first time. I had him on the show. We talked about what was going on. And he said, Stacey lost this time, but I think she's going to be the next governor of Georgia. And I said, I don't even think she's going to run because she's enjoying more clout not being in office than she would if she were in office. When you're in office, people are holding you responsible for stuff, you know? I don't think she's going to get out there. Well, both of us turned out to be dead wrong. She got back out there and she didn't win. So, but I like Bob as a guest. He's really humorous and he offers a totally different perspective from his staunch Republican sort of background. So the election episodes that, and let's see, one more recently I had a woman who is the executive director of Heritage Academy.
Oh, yeah.
Heritage Academy, private school in the area. And she just so believes in the work that they did. And she are still doing. She's kind of retired now, but the work that they're doing, she really believes in it because it's an intersection between the need to educate children, working with families, and using her faith. And that really came through for me because I have a friend who teaches there. And she said, this is the first time in all these years that I've been able to talk about Jesus in my classroom with the students. And it's so refreshing for me. So just to expose their good work. And she really talked about, what is the difference about how they educate not just the child, they educate the whole child and the family.
Yeah.
At Heritage Academy, it's small enough so that if grandma walks through the front door, hello, Miss Smith, how you doing today? And I'm like, grandma got to feel real good about that.
Yeah.
So those are the type episodes I really, really like. Another one I did, and this was one that was kind of off topic, but it's a friend of mine. She written a book about her experiences in church. And it was called When the Church Prays, Preys.
Oh.
And she described this horrible experience that she endured in a church that her family was a member of for years. And in the book, it's almost funny, but it's not funny. She says, yeah, I should have known something was wrong because when we had our oldest child, anytime he would see the bishop, he would just scream. He would act like he had seen the devil. And that was because he had,
Yeah.
So yeah, we have a lot of fun with our conversations.
Well,
And I enjoy most of my episodes because of that.
what about I'm not going to say worse, right? But what is one you was like,
Yeah, I had some folks, I'm try not to shame anybody. I had some folks that should have been experts on the topic. If you look at their resume, you say they're experts on this topic. And then when they get in, their conversation was so boring. I was like, oh God, this episode's a complete dud. And then you try to drag stuff out of them. You feel yourself trying to drag it out. It's just not working. And a couple, last week, 2 weeks ago, I interviewed somebody that I knew was going to be a great, great guest. And I said, I don't have to worry about you because I know you'll keep talking, And he's a regular listener. He said, yeah, I've heard those interviews where you were trying to drag stuff out of people.
Let me ask you, 'cause as a fellow podcaster, like when that's the vibe and that's the mode, right? What's going through your mind? Like, are you just ready for it to be over it?
Yeah, when can this 25 minutes get over with?
Because we spoke on the Swapcast when we did it, and I just hate having to ask a question, but also answer it for you,
Right.
to get dialogue, and then even then it's still not. Yeah. Okay.
It's just bad. And I asked a question. I'm asking, thinking that it's such a rich topic, and there was just so much they could say, and they don't say anything. They give me 3 words. Gosh. And then the other ones, I'm sorry, there's one other type that is problematic. It's those that come in thinking they're giving a speech instead of having a conversation.
Oh man.
So they've prepared notes and they just want to read it all to you.
I'm not gonna lie, that is a new one, and just for anybody watching, 'cause I know y'all watching this, got a legend up here. Please don't come up here with that. Just stay home. You can talk on the phone for all that. I don't want that. If it's not organic, I like it. See, right now we speaking. I don't have no questions written down. I just know I want to talk to you and kind of see where the conversation go. That's all I ever want. I don't want anything more. Or like you don't have to come give me the best answer. Like I'm pretty. You didn't write this stuff down like that, but the answer you gave, I could think of questions you probably didn't think I was going to ask you, and those are great answers. It's organic. If you gotta have a this ain't for you, man.
Yeah.
I don't know.
And I can see them having a couple bullet points or something.
Statistics and stuff is fine.
But some of them have like literally
Paragraph
written a
is crazy.
script. And you're like, no, this is not how this works.
That's just funny because I mean I haven't happened, thank God, but I can imagine people come in there and they feel they ready too. Like, yeah, I'm ready for you today. Do you ever feel like in your show, your podcast, that people feel like maybe when they come on, you're gonna be out to get them? I haven't heard a vibe from your podcast on that yet, but I'm just curious.
I try to set the tone for that. There's sometimes I invite people in where I have to let them know up front, hey, this is not a gotcha sort of situation. We exist to provide information.
Gotcha.
There's one elected official, again, I'm trying not to bash anybody because that's not my goal. That's one of the things I learned from my mother. Her goal was never to embarrass anybody. So I'm not trying to embarrass this individual, but it bothers me when you have someone who is elected by the people and you invite them to do something that is a perfectly non-threatening interview and they refuse to do it. And I'm just like, come on, dude, you expecting people to vote for you, but you won't go out and talk to them? That's crazy.
It's not pushback at all, but I'm thinking, me now, listen, like, I don't think that they won't do one. I'm thinking about the person, right? So you think about you and your expertise. I'm not to say anything bad about me or anybody, but let's say I did ask them and they wanted to come on, right? They probably look at me like, oh, you don't know nothing about no politics anyway. You know, I'm gonna walk all over you and cool. But then for somebody like you, you know, a strong black woman, and they know this. It's not like they just guessing. Like you said, this is your credentials is there. They know already. Like you are certified, so they know this already. I think that's what it'd be more than anything. Even though when the people vote for you, it's like I don't know. But I feel like you should do those kind of platforms because at the very minimum, people either gonna vote for you now because they really really like you, or just don't like you. You don't lose by doing nothing like that. But I would say, like, from talking to you, like, and not look like, but you know your stuff, and you probably got your history, your background, you do your research, you've been around, you was in there. They look at you, they probably be more scared than anything, I would say.
I don't know, maybe that was it, but I'm gonna give you an example of somebody that's just really good with this, and he understands that, hey, he's seeking your vote, so he needs to get and talk to you. That's Senator Harold Jones. I mean, I had him on at the end of last year to just talk about the upcoming legislative session. What are y'all going to be talking about in Atlanta, you know, over the next few months? What are you guys going to do for us over the next 3 months? And he gave an excellent overview of some of the legislation that was being proposed. And he also talked about it from a Republican and Democratic perspective. These are the things that I'm expecting to be put out there. These are the things that I'm advocating for myself. And, you know, we got into food deserts and all this other stuff, you know, voting, because they were looking at changing the voting structure to eliminate runoffs.
Right.
You know, we had a really good discussion about those things. So I'm like, okay, he understands that he needs to face his voters. Why don't the rest of them understand that they have to face their voters, you know?
And then that's the thing, to compare and contrast sometimes, like, you have another guest that probably has more on the line. They willing to come on. It's like, why are you not willing to come on? I would see that as well too. So, that's the only thing about politics that I don't like, because you have people. It makes you question them when they don't want to do interviews.
You really question them.
You know how you said earlier, you was like, you can tell a lot about a city that didn't have any riots. I feel like you could tell a lot about a person in office or elected official, whatever the right verbiage is for that doesn't do interviews. I feel like you can tell a lot about.
Oh yeah,
well.
you can tell an awful lot, and there are a few names I call now. Button my lip and keep my mouth shut. But yeah, that speaks volumes in a very negative way when you are asking for votes, but you won't talk to anybody.
Yeah. Or the only time you want to talk to people is when you need the votes.
Or when you're right. The only
You
time
know,
you will talk is
like that
when you're
customer that
running for
call you because
office.
need some money. You already know, like, hey, what's
Right.
going on? Oh,
That's it.
you wait them
That's
5 minutes and they finally ask you for the $50 and they even ask, So yeah, I what is your least favorite thing about podcasts, if at all, if any at all?
Let's see. I've tried to overcome some of the obstacles, but okay. Thing one is, as good as your episodes and your discussions and your guests may be, you still got to work to get listeners. You got to make people aware of what you have to offer. And it's like any other business endeavor, folks got to market, folks have to know that you're there. So that is something you just have to work on. Like you were talking about number of views and things. You look at some of this stuff and you go, that has 1 million views. What is it adding to anybody's life? Like you just said.
No impact.
So that's one of the more difficult aspects of it. And I've just been out more. That's why I wanted to do an interview with you. I mean, I want folks to know about what we're providing because really it is a service, and it helps you. Can move you from here to there.
Right,
And the more you know, the more you grow. So that's one thing. The next thing is getting frustrated when somebody doesn't want to be a guest. That kind of is like, okay, where am I going to get a guest? And now it's not quite as bad now that I'm more established. And like I said, I do have people who are reaching out to me, hey, can I be a guest on the show? But first, it was a little bit more difficult. And also, I was in an advantageous position because I knew a lot of the people that I was contacting. It could have been much worse, but yeah, just making sure you got the right guests lined up at the right time and that you can ask the right questions to really get something substantive out of it.
Yeah, and like I said, I like what you doing and how. But the few ones I watched and I went back before. Once you hit me up and you sent me a few, but I purposely didn't watch those. I watched other ones.
Really?
Yeah, 'cause I was like, well, nah, this is what she want me to see. I want to see what
You missed that great interview with Jared Williams.
But it's fun. I'm gonna still watch them. I always want to watch it post, because that's what I like to do. And I'm like, well, I want to see the growth. So I'm gonna start beginning, then the end, then the middle. I try to do that to see. And I even seen that, even though I know you're probably a great talker and stuff, but I can still see even from beginning to like how comfortable you have gotten even doing it. Just even mannerisms you do, like just how you are on camera. I don't know, just maybe I'm looking at it from a podcast standpoint. So I'm looking a little different, but
Yeah.
I said, oh, that's because you look different then. And I'm like, okay, well, she was trying to figure out what she doing here, what she doing. But now it's like you just go, you just on it.
Yeah.
And I like to see that. I like to see growth. So I wish I have been able to watch it from the very beginning. But I also feel like the political side of things, just on a relationship standpoint. To me, whenever Karen goes until she likes something, I like it too.
Okay, cool.
She normally likes anything I would like. So I went back and I watched that one. I said, that was a good one. And then you had some like really, really great. And now I know for myself, not that I want to push somebody off, but if somebody political was to come to me and say, I want to da-da-da, I would definitely push them and say, hey, I want you to do that one.
Okay.
You know what I'm saying? Just because I feel like sometimes it's not for me to do. Like I've done some, but it's like, you don't want to do, you're not up to do it. I don't know if you ever had that, but you're not up to do it. I'll do it. Probably because I ain't got no gas. And those still turn out to be good. Quiet as kept, those be turning out to be really, really good ones. But it's sometimes where I know that's not really my realm or it's not the pocket I'm going in right now.
Right.
Right now, the pocket I'm in right now is, it makes sense. I had, Earl Grey Summers, then Ben Hassan, then I was on UPW. So now I'm trying to stay in that lane to capture that audience more and more. This make a lot of sense. So when you reached out, I was like, oh yeah, real quick. If I was at work, it's let me hit it back. You know what I'm saying? Okay. And so I appreciate that. If you can, I want you to tell people like where can they find your podcast at, and what's the best sites for them to find your podcast at?
Sure. The Local Matters Podcast of Georgia on YouTube. Please subscribe because, we are out here trying to get more followers and subscribers. Definitely. So please subscribe. I don't do a video every single week. I do an audio episode every Wednesday, drops every Wednesday. Every now and then when I have something just really good, I'll do that on video on YouTube. On Facebook, there's every single episode. I have the Local Matters Podcast of Georgia.
That's the page, right?
Page. Gotcha. Got a page. I finally, Ken Macon was one of the people that you need your own page. Girl, get your own page. So I have a Local Matters Podcast of Georgia page. Please follow because in addition to posting the episodes and information about upcoming guests and things. We also post some news articles and information that's really helpful. Like this is September is voter registration month. And we ask some questions. Hey, are you registered to vote? You better get ready. Deadline's coming. Things like that. Last month was like, I can't remember, Senior Citizen Month or something other. And I had a guest on from AARP to talk about that. So we've got news and information as well as the episodes there on Facebook. Also, the podcast itself is on Spotify, Apple Podcast, and SoundCloud. Okay, SoundCloud is actually my host. So yeah, go to Local Matters podcast there. You'll see my smiling face, and you can pull up an episode anytime. And they're also on my website. I have a website for my there, so the episodes are there. So
what's
please
the
find
website
us.
for the business?
Janice Allen Jackson.weebly WEEBLY.com.
Okay. This is the last question for referral. As far as voting and just the politics and the polls and things of that nature, for best practice for a young person, a older person, ignorant, not in the sense of us calling names, just ignorant to some a subject matter. What will be best practice for the election time, as far as what's a good time frame to start trying to figure out who's running for something? What's a good time frame to try to do your research, and then going to the polls and finally making that selection rather than going up there.
Yeah. The worst thing you can do for yourself is start at the last minute. I have done it myself. I've heard other people say they've done it. For the bigger elections, the candidates have a little money. They're putting out mail. You get postcards or letters or whatever in your mail. They're sending them to your house. Please read them. I mean, I usually try to put them all in a place. Then I sit down at a certain time and I go through all of them so I can compare information about them. I also like to go to their websites to see more. It's like, so, I want to know a little bit about the person. So you can go to their website. Usually there's a bio there and you can find out more about him or her. There's also the news, and that's a little bit biased, and sometimes it's a 30-second clip or whatever. But try to get information from multiple sources about the person. Start before early voting starts, just because that early voting period is going to be 3 weeks, basically 2.5, 3 weeks, somewhere in there. So I would start before then. My personal tip is some people go to vote as soon as early voting starts, and I don't. I start researching before early voting starts, but I don't vote that first week of early voting unless I'm going to be out of town or something. And the reason I don't do that is because in many, many instances, there will be some late dropping information that may change how you view that particular candidate.
Right.
So I usually vote either on election day itself or just a few days before.
Okay. I like the way you worded that. I think that a lot of people go to the polls, they then and there, and I know we got this. It's a stigma. I think I don't know what's the thing. I don't know if I'm using my words, but I'm just going to vote Democrat.
Yeah.
I'm just going to vote Democrat.
It's easy, but it doesn't always guarantee the results that you want. But it's easy.
And then what happens when you got 3 Democrat?
Yeah, right.
On there, right.
And, the primary, you got to choose from among them. Yeah, from the primary, you got to choose from among them. So, know something about them. Know something about
his name is Devin. I'm going to vote for that one.
That sounds like a nice name. But, and the other tip I would give is a lot of times, particularly in a place like Augusta, I think, it might have been Dr. Wayne Frazier, because I had him on to talk about education too. He said, don't vote for me just because you know me. Vote for me because you've researched my track record. We have too many people who are voting for somebody. Oh yeah, I went to high school with him. I'm gonna vote for him. Or he lives around the corner from me. I'm gonna vote for him. And that doesn't guarantee you that you're really gonna get any results.
If you could, and I don't mean him. So he probably tired of me. We spoke over the years. We've been trying to do a podcast for a while. I was ready. He wasn't ready. He ready. I wasn't ready. I want to get him on. 'Cause I know it's gonna be a good podcast because he speaks very well. And way I do my questions, I know it'll be really, really good for him. I have to say this. This is a Fraser story, but I had a guy on my podcast who told the story about the time he was in Glen Hills, and
Mm-hmm.
then Frazier came to Glen Hills,
Mm-hmm.
and I guess he got him out the hole. Like, hey, you come here. And I guess he went. I guess he told him his pants was sagging. Or it was something. No bell. I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
Something crazy. Anyway, the guy was telling me. I'm like, whatever. He tell me a story. And he go, yeah, I think it was in the paper. So I edited the video. Some said just look it up. I tried to look it up. Couldn't find something. I finally found the picture, and that's one of my favorite clips because, like I said, his story thing. Because like
Mm-hmm.
he says something. That's his story, but it's documented evidence for real. So that picture I finally got the backstory to a picture that, and I didn't think about that because I had him up for something totally different.
Mm-hmm.
He'd have me tell me his life, and then his life was telling me about that, and I thought that was dope. And I even tagged Mr. Frazier, and I think that's why he finally reached out to me and stuff. But hopefully, I get him on at some point. The last thing is with the podcast, and I want to end here. I do think you mentioned ways to research these elected officials and stuff, and I think that's one of the best lanes is podcasting to get to know somebody. Because from this already, they get to know the funny side of you, the educational side of you, your background, how you are the person, your mannerisms. Get to know a good broad, not even broad, but a nice version of a person
Mm-hmm.
based off their energy and how they move and talk versus reading a paper or that scripted thing the news give you. And um, I just hope that you're able to get the guests you want now, because I do feel like podcasting is a great tool, especially for election time, because you get to really pick up just characteristics and personalities of the person you're electing as an official via podcast. And I don't know if you feel the same on your podcast, but I like that vibe.
I learned some things. I will say that since my show is a little shorter, sometimes I don't get as much. But normally, yeah, I can tell some things. I mean, one of the easy things for me, and this just comes from my being a friend of mine calls me an air traffic controller, the sort of personality to keep things moving and structured and orderly. I'll say, hey, we got a time limit. Uh, can you I need you to respond to these 3 questions or 5 questions or whatever they are in 8 minutes or 10 minutes or whatever, and you learn a lot about them when you figure out they can or cannot stay within that 8 or 10 minutes. It's like, okay, you don't follow directions very well now, do you? Or you don't know how to edit yourself, do you?
Yeah.
You
It's very
know,
telling.
yeah, some of those what appear to be small clues are very telling.
Well, look, I definitely enjoyed speaking with you. I'm not gonna lie to you. I was gonna try to do 45, but you kind of killed that in the first 12 minutes because you told me a lot,
Hmm.
and I loved it. So definitely appreciate you coming through. I can't wait to edit this and put it out, though. This is a great episode to me. I loved it. I learned a lot today. So
Thank
appreciate
you.
you.
Thank you.
You're
Thank
welcome.
you.
All right, Morning Master Podcast. We out.